Another thing that's really important about feet is how you move them. The first video I did was about actually how should your feet feel when in contact with the ground. This one's about how do you move your feet. So there is a tendency in Aikido, because we're working on mats, to slide your feet along, right along the mat. And it's great in here because these mats are somewhat slippery. But if you're outside, you're going to find very quickly, if you're wearing shoes and you try and slide your feet along, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to mess up your knees. So one of the things we practice is picking up feet. So it's a good practice to remember anytime you're moving around on a mat to lift your feet. I don't mean big lifting up foot motions, but foot comes forward, foot comes back. And each time I step, I make sure that my weight's evenly distributed. I'll notice sometimes that if I take a step, my weight will tend to come to the outside of the foot. That's my tendency. And so I'll correct that by taking a step and noticing, am I maintaining good weight distribution? So a good way to practice that is, again, using a bokken. So I'm going to do a showman strike with the bokken. I'm going to practice taking a step forward this time and doing my strike. So when I take my step forward, I'm making sure that my foot is moving rather than sliding across the mat. And I'm making sure that it's coming back down with the weight evenly distributed. So notice that moment of contact. There's a tendency either to land on the little toe side of the foot or the big toe side of the foot, or doing a heel strike like people do when they're using shoes. Notice how you're placing your foot on the ground. A barefoot runner will tend to place their foot, ball of the foot first, then heel. A shoed runner, somebody wearing shoes, will tend to go heel first, then toe. And since we're barefoot, let's imitate the barefoot running style. If you watch any of the great marathoners, some of the Kenyans will run barefoot. Watch how they stride. They'll take short strides and land on the balls of their feet. So practice that and notice when you land on the front of your foot, is the weight evenly distributed. So doing a bokken strike is a really good way to practice placing your foot on the mat. So something else that happens when people turn is they tend to spin on their heels. They'll lean back on their heels and spin. So people will turn around like this, turning on their heels. It's really fun because you're rotating in this nice pivot. It's also a bad idea to get into that habit, because if you're outside on the pavement, either barefoot or in shoes, the heel of your shoe will stick, your body will turn, your foot will stay in place, you can hurt your knee. So in my dojo I teach pick up your feet to turn around. So I pick up my foot and turn it around. Connected with that is the fact that since I know I'm going to turn that way, I'm going to turn my foot in a way that's going to match that motion. So I pivot my foot to turn. I pivot my foot to turn. In fact, every time that I decide I want to turn in a particular direction, if I want to turn this way, I'll place my foot outward. If I want to turn this way, I'll place the foot I'm coming onto inward. And it's important to note that that turn of the foot, it's like the turnout of a ballerina, where they turn out their hips. It comes from the hips, not from the knee. So whenever you turn your leg, it's coming from this ball and socket joint up here. So from there, rather than twisting the knee. So whenever, to check in with your posture, check to make sure your knee is over your foot. If you ever find your knee not above your foot, fix it by shifting your hips. So these exercises we do to stretch these muscles in here help with the ability to turn. Remember that, to twist, to turn from the ball and socket joint. So if I'm going to turn around my foot, I do it from up here. So place your foot in a direction that matches the way that you want to turn.